Hello, welcome to Meant to Move podcast. I'm Vanessa, your host. Today, men do not fear. This is a very important topic for you. We have with us the excellent female performance specialist, Mikayla Foss, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, mind you. It was online, but you don't need to know that. It was such a great conversation. And the reason why I'm saying men don't run away is because I think that this conversation impacts men differently than it does females. For us, it's really important to know all this information to help ourselves. But at the end of the day, having that support from our male partners, from our brothers, from our fathers, whoever it might be who's in our lives, understanding even just a little bit of this makes both of lives, like both of that parts of that relationship, so much better, so much easier. I am really lucky in myself that Michael, my partner, he has gone out of his way to learn about what is useful for me during certain parts of the cycle, whether it's food or supplementation. And I go out of my way to find out things that are really important for him and for his health. So this is why I think this conversation is incredible for anybody listening. But what I really love about Mikayla's approach is its simple approach. There's no complicated hormonal profiling or anything like that. It's a really great launching pad to get yourself moving to that next step of performance in your life, and a really good spot to start researching and going deeper if you really, really want to. So I'm really glad that we had this conversation, and I'm really excited to bring it to you. Here it comes. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it on your favorite social media platforms. Whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn, your share can help someone discover the power of mindful movement. Use the hashtag #MeantToMovePodcast so we can see your posts and connect with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Meant to Move. I have with me a lovely friend who I met just recently, actually last year at conference. Hey, Mikayla, nice to have you.
Hello, thanks for having me. It's so good to chat.
It is really good to chat. And this is one of my favorite parts about podcast is I got to meet you last year at fitness conference. I absolutely loved your session. We totally vibed. We got to go and do a fun little market down in Bangkok and have a great time. And now I get to have you on the pod, and we're going to talk all things women's health, performance, everything that goes with that. And I'm really excited because this is a topic that's obviously close to our hearts, but it's a topic that I think is important for everyone to know. And, you know, we have a lot of male trainers listening, but I also think we have a lot of, males whose partners might be influenced by this, or their sisters or their mothers, or etc. And I think the question that I wanted to open with is, we're talking about women's health, women's performance, but why is it important for everybody to know about this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just said it. Women are 50% of the population, and we are here right now because of women, and anyone who's ever lived owes it to the menstrual cycle. So it's important to have a greater understanding. If you're a coach, on how you're going to approach each individual. We look at all accounts of someone's readiness and their physiology. So why wouldn't we look at the gender differences? And then, yeah, like how you treat your partner or your mother and understanding their hormone fluctuations and what they're maybe going through during different phases of their cycle is probably going to help you in the long run too.
I'm a strong advocate for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're helping you out.
exactly. It's a favor. We're giving you lots of favors today. I like it. So I think one of the things in our emails that we were going back and forth about what we wanted to talk about, you use this phrase, how can we set women up for success? And I really, really liked that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So women have been historically underrepresented in medical and performance based research. To go a little bit down a tangent, it wasn't really until 1993 that the NIH actually passed that women and minorities have to be included in medical research. So we really just didn't have a lot of information in regards to women. And so we were giving women the recommendations made for men, and we were just telling them to maybe make it smaller or alter it in some way, but we weren't really tailoring to their individual physiology. So to set women up for success is going to require an understanding of what's actually happening in their bodies, encouragement empathy. And ultimately, I just want women to feel empowered by this conversation. I think there's a lot of maybe the media or whatnot portraying women on their period or going through their luteal phase and saying like you need to just do yoga, pilates, sit, watch a movie, like you can't push hard and strength train. And it's like, are those things setting us up for success in the future, in the long term? And that's really what I'm passionate about.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. That's really, really cool. And interestingly enough, I had this performance research written down because I think this is important. You're coming from a performance background, I suppose. You're teaching performance as well as health. If someone is not really understanding what we mean by performance research, let's kind of maybe dive into this just really quickly as like a setup for where we want to go. Because a lot of the health and fitness advice we receive comes from athletes, really, initially, doesn't it? Like they kind of gets tested on athletes and then it gets, filtered down and passed through us. So when you say that women weren't in this performance research, can you go a little deeper?
Yeah. It is performance based from a sports performance standpoint, but also medical research as well. So we were excluded initially because in the 50s and the 60s, there was a drug called thalidomide that was prescribed to a lot of women as an anti nausea medication. So a lot of pregnant women were prescribed this medication. And there wasn't enough studies or research done on the drug. And so essentially, a lot of women started birthing children that had severe limb deformities. And after that, it just was like huge halt on including women in medical research because we didn't know the implications that certain drugs could have. And then again, it wasn't until 1993 that we said, no, we need to include women in this. So that's from the medical lens. The performance based lens, I do mean sports performance. Only 4 to 6% of studies have been done on women from the sports performance lens. But I also mean the corporate lens, the how you show up as a parent or just a human in the world. Like everything we do is some type of performance, and having the capacity to meet the demands of everyday life is important, whether you are an athlete or whether you are a badass CEO wanting to go give a presentation and be able to meet that moment that matters to you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good setup, I think, for like what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive into kind of the meaty question. You mentioned women's health span. You mentioned, lean muscle. You mentioned preparation. Let's dive into if you had someone starting, I don't know, let's talk about the age that you'd want to start with someone. If you could set this woman up for success, for health through her life, what would that look like?
I mean, starting from children, right? Youth, I think there is something so special about talking to girls, so young women, about their performance, not in a way of aesthetics and how they look, but how what they put in their body is going to help them and how powerful they're going to be, and encouraging women to stay in sports and to keep doing those things, not from an aesthetic lens, but what else it will bring into your life. So I think from the younger age, it is more about the intention behind our conversation with girls and how we're speaking towards things like working out and fueling and how that can empower them versus what it's going to make them look like. And then when it gets to women of menstruating age, not pregnant women, that is really about putting on as much lean muscle mass as possible to best set you up before perimenopause and menopause. And so that is resistance training. That is true high intensity intervals. That is preparing your body for success from a metabolic standpoint, but also just a moving well standpoint, having the mobility and stability requirements that you need to go perform your best. And then when we get into perimenopause, menopause, that's really looking at setting yourself up for success from a central nervous system standpoint. We know like things of consequence happen at speed. So whether you're slipping and falling, you need to be able to react to that. And when you start to lose estrogen, that is heavily correlated with your actin and myosin filaments and how you create muscular contraction. So as you get older, if you're not doing that heavy, powerful lifting, you could slip and fall and hurt yourself. And that's not going to set you up for success even later into being elderly. So it's just always looking at not only the mindset aspect, the performance aspect, but how you're going to be able to go show up your best, do all the things that you love to do, and not have your physical inabilities get in the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. This is great. Okay. So I'm having a flashback of me. Well, yeah, I went to an all girls high school, and PE was always a sensitive subject, was always really challenging, I suppose, to be able to. This is where we really noticed that divide between girls who liked, moving or playing sport, and the girls who really didn't want to, or who felt like because they maybe weren't good at sport, that really wasn't for them. And, menstruation played a huge part in it. Even then, girls would be getting their period and being like, nah, I can't play sport. I can't do this. So perhaps maybe let's talk about what happens in that menstruation and kind of maybe why people might feel like I've got my period, I don't want to do anything, or I don't feel like moving. What happens there?
Yeah, I think there's it's so taboo to talk about. And where I grew up in the US, in Kansas, the Midwest, I remember, I don't know about you, but we had one class. It was like a day in fifth grade where they split up the boys and the girls. And like the girls went and learned about their periods. And I don't still to this day know what the boys learned about. That will be a mystery, but it was very like hush hush. And we got little like pamphlets and like a bag with like a pad and a tampon in it. And they were like, good luck, have fun. And it was kind of this thing of like some of my friends had it, some didn't. But I think it was just so not talked about. And then a lot of women get into sports or like dance, gymnastics, and instantly maybe go on birth control to try to like have control over their cycle or regulate that. And it was almost this badge of honor. I grew up as a dancer. It was almost this badge of honor if you didn't get your period or you lost your period, because there was just this feeling around like, oh, you must be working really hard that you don't have a period. Like you must be so lean, and that's like a sign of hard work. And so I don't know, it was just such a cool thing to not have it, not talk about it, like, oh, I don't have to deal with that. And almost became like a competitive nature, at least in dance, and I know in gymnastics too. So ultimately, I think it comes down to it's not talked about enough. The detriment of low energy availability and not having enough fuel coming in and losing your period wasn't really talked about. It was just very hush hush. And so, for women that struggled with that, or girls that struggled with that, or maybe had heavy bleeding and didn't understand their symptoms, probably made them not want to do sports altogether. They were like, I'd rather just avoid it instead of feeling uncomfortable. So, I think the more we can talk about it, the more we can educate women, the better they're going to be, and hopefully stay in sports, because we know that has so many benefits, regardless if you go play professionally, but just in your work ethic, your tenacity, your movement ability as you get older. A lot of women who played sports growing up are now CEOs of companies. I don't know the exact statistic there, but I've read something along the lines of like women who played sports turn out to be really great. Period.
Finally, yeah, good choice of word.
Science.
It's interesting because I experienced a similar association with that kind of the period side of things as well. And I would love for people to understand, if they don't know maybe a little bit more about the menstrual cycle. Let's talk about that in a second. But for anyone listening, it's so interesting. I'm a 37-year-old female who's experiencing her period properly for the first time since I was a teenager. Isn't that insane, right, when you think about it? So, and it's no one's fault. I went on the pill, birth control, very early on, like nearly as soon as I got my period from memory, because the doctors just, it was the thing that you did. You just went straight on it. I had to control it for sports, athletics, all of that. And I have been on some form of birth control my entire life. And, there's been that plethora of pain and endometriosis, and we'll leave that aside for now. But I have just come off birth control, and it's wild. I'm like, okay, I'm experiencing things like I was a teenager, and it's such a strange thing to get my head around. And so, for women on birth control, for women who are thinking of coming off birth control, for women who aren't thinking about it, what's happening with this 28-day cycle? What's going on?
Yeah. You were a gymnast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dancer, gymnast. Lots of same experiences. So to quickly touch on the birth control piece, and then we'll go through the cycle. But I think birth control can serve its time and place. And I think kind of just coming back to the detriment of it is just that we don't have enough research when we go back to that, and we don't know if it's actually helping us in some regards, or if it is like you. And for myself, I got prescribed it when I was 14 for acne. And so it was like, was that the best solution, and is that the best long-term solution? We just don't know because there's not enough research out there. And now you're probably experiencing like, oh, I'm learning my body, I'm learning like how to tune into my body more. And for so long I had a synthetic hormone that was regulating it, and my period wasn't even a true period, it was a withdrawal bleed from the hormone. So like, a lot of women go through a lot from a mental standpoint and a physical standpoint when they're on it, off of it, and that's also not talked about enough. And that's going to affect your performance in everyday life. So birth control is just can be an interesting thing. It's not that it is good or bad. It is just that it's not researched enough, and we as women aren't told enough about it before we're prescribed it to make the best educated decisions for our own bodies. As for the actual cycle, so on average, you have a 28-day cycle, and we know average just means middle of the bell curve. So most women fall to either side of that 28 days. The day one is the bleed phase, so the start of your period. And then around day 14, if we're looking at a 28-day cycle, that's ovulation. So this is called your follicular or your low hormone phase, is how I like to refer to it. So around the first 14 days. After ovulation, we consider this your luteal or high hormone phase, and this goes for around another 14 days until your next bleed phase comes. And so this is your luteal high hormone phase. This is when progesterone rises, which is really catabolic in nature. So it breaks things down. And this can be a time where women experience more inflammatory response as they're preparing to shed tissue. So this is a time where we might need more support from a recovery standpoint.
Excellent. I think you just made that so simple. I've heard it described before, and they break it down into way too many phases, and it's very confusing. I really like that. That's excellent. It's interesting because you've also talked about this low energy availability, and just for I'll just give my experience, and if you would like to give yours, please feel free. But on birth control, it was like a constant low energy. Like I didn't really feel like I had like a peak and a trough, particularly at a certain time. And it was particularly towards the end of the life of the IUD that I had, like so low energy, like really low energy availability. And I'm someone who, like in my 20s, like I was one of the fittest people in my gym, in like what I was doing. I was like a powerhouse of particularly what would you call anaerobic fitness. I had a lot of anaerobic capacity. I could sprint, get my heart rate up really high, and then recover, and then go again, and then rest, and then go again. I'm not good in long distance. Let's not go there. But give me recovery and repeat efforts. I'm like a little energizer bunny.
We'll hit it.
And now that I'm off it, my energy availability is insanely different. My iron has actually increased, which is insane as well. And like I can actually feel these kinds of like, oh yeah, has a few days here, it's a bit hard. But then all of a sudden I have this like energy shoot up. Like I haven't experienced this in so many years, and it's so nice in that what you call the low hormone phase, the bleed. Like honestly, I have not felt so much energy in such a long time, and it's incredible. It's so cool. What's happening? Like what's happening?
Yeah. Well, first, that makes me so happy for you because, like, that's probably how your body's naturally supposed to be. And so that you're experiencing that right now makes me so happy for you. What's happening from a physiological standpoint is, yeah, after ovulation, as progesterone rises, again, catabolic in nature, you have high pro-inflammatory response. But when it drops back off, which is the bleed phase, your physiology is actually closest to a male's during that time. So that follicular phase is when hormonally you are closest to a male's physiology. And so it's interesting because a lot of women do PR when they're on their period. And I think historically we've been told, like, oh, you're on your period, maybe don't push it too hard. And we want to prioritize how the woman feels first and foremost, her own unique individual experience. And sometimes women do feel like crap on their period and they have menstrual symptoms that don't allow them to push hard. But from a strictly physiological standpoint, your hormones just went whoop and then dropped off. And so a lot of women do get that surge of energy. I always know, like, by day 3 to 5 of my cycle, you can't tell me anything. I'm on top of the world. Like, we're good. And I think that being said, too, that gives me more empathy. And a lot of women, when you have the understanding of what's happening in your body, by the time you do get to your luteal phase and you're feeling like lethargic or you can't hit the weight, it's like, oh, I always feel this way on day 24. Like, this is just what my body's doing. And it takes away kind of that pressure of like having to always perform your best and allows you the space to say, like, I can scale back, I can focus on technique, recovery, be productive in other ways because I know I'm going to hit it next week when I'm in my follicular phase.
It's so important, that consideration, because I've talked about this in previous pods about how everyone, women, men, can have this pressure, particularly when we're at the gym, or when, even if we're just, I wouldn't say like a heavy gym goer, if you just, you're doing it for your health and you're going along and you've got your program to follow. If you feel like you can't meet the minimum standards of your own program because you feel like low energy or you feel like shit, basically, you feel like you failed yourself because you feel like you can't do what's essentially prescribed for you in front of you. And it's just such a shame that we're conditioned and we're programmed to feel that way, when particularly females have such ability to come into these highs and lows. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. And I think if you get the habit of tracking your own cycle and you can really tune inwards, that's just another metric. That's just another like tool to help you unlock and again have that empathy and grace for yourself and also know how to structure your training. Like, there's a lot of debate out there about training around the menstrual cycle. And I've seen studies that are like essentially saying, oh, your performance doesn't change based on where you are in your menstrual cycle, which, yes, is true. There is a difference between training and recovering from training and performance, which happens one singular moment. And women have the ability to peak in performance regardless of where they are in their cycle. They can hit those PRs, break world records regardless. So we don't want to tell women you can't do this and get into the psychological issue. But we do want to say it is potentially going to be harder for your body to recover from those high intensity efforts when you're fighting against progesterone and you have things that are very pro inflammatory. So, how in your training can you structure it in a way that lowers intensity so that you can recover, so that you're best set to hit the moment when it matters? And I think that is what empowers women. And maybe it's just a, oh, I have an undulating periodization and my deload week is going to be my late luteal, that week before my period, because I know that's when my body's going to need it. And starting to kind of sync that up and flow literally with your flow, like pun intended. So
No, that's great. And for someone listening who's not sure kind of what that means, is periodization is kind of like, it's the same thing. It's a increase and a decrease of your intensity and your volume to your training, which you can affect on. And I don't think that, a lot of people who would maybe attend classes, or again, who are going to that kind of just doing my regular program, would necessarily think about that. But it's important for all people, not just females. It can, and I love how you correlated that with performance. So it's like you can perform at any time, but if you're sticking to this like program, if you're looking for health, if you're looking for longevity, you want to have these highs and lows for training, so that overall your performance, you can do what you need to do whenever. Am I hitting the mark there?
exactly. Yeah. You would, regardless if you're male, female, like you want to never take a deload week and recover. So, my view as a coach is how can we pair that deload week with when your body needs it the most and be efficient in that regard? Like, I don't want you to have the deload week when you're in your follicular phase and estrogen's rising right before ovulation. And that's actually going to help you hit those high intensities and feel powerful and be able to recover from it. I'd rather you take it when your body needs it.
Super smart. Really good. So let's talk about lean muscle. Let's talk about the types of training that we kind of go through. We mentioned a little bit of yoga, Pilates. I'm happy for you to be as controversial or as not controversial as you like, because I do get a lot of questions about, does yoga, does Pilates count as resistance training? And so if you are building up lean muscle, what's that? What do you think's there's no ideal, but let's talk about these different modalities of training.
Yeah. I want to preface this by saying I'm actually a registered yoga teacher as well. And I'm like a big yogi. Like, I think I told you after Bangkok, I was going to a yoga retreat. So I am never anti yoga. I do yoga and Pilates every week and I love it. And I think it's great. From strictly a putting on lean muscle mass standpoint, you need to have stimulus to create the adaptation. And sometimes Pilates and yoga isn't the high intensity stimulus that you need. And the word intensity is really in regards to like your 1 rep max. Like, how heavy are you lifting in regards to how heavy you could lift for one singular effort? With Pilates, it is that lower weight, higher reps, more muscular endurance focused training, which can be great for technique, body awareness. It kicks my butt, like getting the core work, getting the like elongation. Like, I feel like posturally, I love it. But from a, hey, during menstruating years, non-pregnant, your goal is to put on as much lean muscle mass. You need that stimulus. And so I love a good blend of it. I love, 3 days a week of heavy resistance training, maybe 1 day of yoga and Pilates. But we really want to look at that like to failure rep range when it comes to women of that age. So I love like a 6 to 10 rep range, almost a failure, or 1 to 2 reps in reserve to really hit those high intensities. You want to fatigue the muscle to then get the stimulus and create the adaptation.
Okay, here's the question that all women are going, well, not all women, I lie. Do we hear a lot? You and I have been training for forever.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, we've been told that training like that, Mikayla, 6 reps is going to make you look muscly. It's going to make you look bulky. It's going to make you look perhaps less feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Not the words that I would choose, but how do we start to break down this stigma?
First, I think everybody's definition of what bulky is will be different. So, and everyone's preference of what aesthetics you look like are going to be different. Like, my body might not be appealing to someone, and to someone else, it might be their dream body. And that has nothing to do with me. And that has everything to do with their perception. I think, A, it's a lot harder to put on muscle than you would assume. And B, if you're viewing it strictly from an aesthetic lens, you're going to miss a lot of the benefits of the performance that we're talking about. But ultimately, we know that lifting heavy weights is not going to innately make you bulky. You need to be in a calorie surplus. You need to be lifting again and again and again for years to really put that on. And so I think women are fearful of it before really understanding the benefits that it could bring to their life. And so I think if we view it more from the lens of how is this going to make me perform better, show up better, feel better, then you might actually like what your body looks like, and then you might not be so scared of it. But all that to say, everyone has their own preferences to what their own body looks like. Up to them.
That's it. No, that's a beautiful answer. It's so great because, body perception is so personal.
Yeah.
And it always kind of breaks my heart a little bit when I still hear that from women. They're like, oh no, I can't train like that because I'll just put on muscle. And I'm like, but that's the point. Like, I'm like, yes, I want you to put on muscle. And I think that, it's understanding our own perception of why we might think that, having more or less muscle is important or is valid, and how that relates to our overall health and well-being, rather than, like you said, just from that aesthetic point of view. Because I remember, as a teenager, the defining feature that I really disliked about my body wasn't, muscular arms or anything like that. It was my muscular traps. So I had like a really muscular upper back and shoulders, right? And so they're not so big anymore. They were really defined. They were really big. They were really muscular. And for me, that was, as a young girl, everyone's, got these petite little collarbones, and here's me, like, I felt like the Hulk, like, but no one else really noticed. And it was just my own perception of that. And eventually my perception of it changed into like, well, I'm actually stronger than like 80% of the guys in the room as well
Talk
as
about
the
it.
girls. Yeah, yes. Like, okay, like that's pretty impressive. But I think that acknowledging your own reservations about the way that you look and kind of trying to debunk that is a really good way forward. Do you have any tips for anyone?
It really changed for me. Like coming from the dance background, it was very, I have this audition coming up. This is what they want. This is what I need to fit into this mold. I have to do this to change my body, or I have to train like this, or I can't eat a lot. And it was very like mentally not great. When I started, I coach now. I'm a performance coach at Exos, and I work a lot with athletes. And that's when I really started to change my own perception, because I am never telling athletes, oh, hey, don't you want that hot summer bikini body? I'm like, hey, like, did you sleep last night? Like, how's your fuel? Like, let's go hit this high intensity lift. Like, it comes from a performance standpoint. And that being said, like, if I'm encouraging other people to do that and I'm not focusing on their aesthetics, why would I focus on mine? I would rather feel like I'm strong and I can demo. Like the best feeling in the world is when a group of athletes is look at you and you pick up the heaviest kettlebell and you do something, they're like, oh dang, I should probably lift that weight because I weigh a lot more than her. Like I'm an NFL player and she just lifted that. Like, okay, let's level up together. And so that's what makes me feel empowered now, is my ability to demo something, demo it well, live what I preach, and know that I'm showing up the best I can in a healthy way. And of course, like it's still hard sometimes, just naturally as women. And I think bodies are such a trend. Like, isn't it weird that a couple years ago it was really cool to have like a big booty, and now
Yeah,
it's like
thick.
Pilates body? Thick. Yeah. A couple years ago, everyone was like, you should sell a big booty program. Like, you'd make so much money by telling people how to get a big butt. And I'd be like, that's kind of my genetics, and like I like to lift weights. But now it's like what's making money is like women being like, get these like Pilates body. So it's always going to be a trend. And sometimes your body and your natural genetics are going to fit that trend, and sometimes they aren't. And again, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with outwards. So finding what empowers you, what lights you up, and what makes you feel strong.
That's excellent. Really, really like perfect advice. I love that. Let's talk a little bit about, you've mentioned how important it is to build this lean muscle, during your menstruation years, not pregnancy. What happens during peri and menopause that changes, and you alluded to nervous system changes as well, that makes this muscle building phase so important?
Yeah, great question. Basically from menstruating age into menopause, there is like a transition. But when we get to what we define as menopause, that is one singular date, and that is 12 months after a woman's last cycle. And when she hits menopause, one of the biggest changes that I notice, or that I hear from a symptomology standpoint, is the drop in estrogen. The drop in estrogen, I mentioned this earlier, but it's heavily correlated with actin and myosin and the contractile elements of a muscle fiber. And so being able to really fire and contract and be reactive and prevent yourself from that slip or that fall. Also maintaining lean muscle mass as we get older just becomes more challenging from that standpoint. Also, women have about 70 to 80% of the creatine stores that men do naturally. So we have less creatine available in our bodies, less fast twitch muscle fibers. So as we get older, just really important to continuously eat enough, especially protein, but also the training transitions less from a to max fatigue gaining lean muscle. Not that you can't, you absolutely still can, but more from a lifting heavy. And so like less reps, high intensity. This is going to be more like powerful heavy lifting. And a lot of women, if they haven't been training throughout the years, I wouldn't tell you go trap bar deadlift and like go try to hit that high intensity and go sprint tomorrow. They still need to be taken through like long foundational phases to get them there. But the intent is to get that CNS response to essentially allow them that like quick reactivity versus like how much can they put on at that point.
Yeah, that's such a great explanation, because I think that that's often the forgotten piece of people. We hear a lot, train heavy, train power, lift as heavy as you can. Most of the clients who I see are coming to me injured from a completely deconditioned phase. So they haven't been training in months or potentially years, childbirth or no childbirth, like regardless. And I'm talking men and women as well. There's no way that your body is conditioned enough to safely participate in super heavy lifting or a sprint or a box jump, even box jumps, because you're never only doing one in a class. So that's the key, really, isn't it? There's that missing link that a lot of people forget about, isn't that right?
Yeah, we want to meet people where they are. And I think if women hear, say they're in perimenopause, menopause, and they hear, oh, to get benefit, I need to lift at a high intensity and be powerful and strong. And I haven't lifted in years, so I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to walk. Like, that's not what we want. And so I think, again, when I say intensity, it's in relationship to the individual as they are in that exact moment. So to one person, a body weight squat might be intense, and then we can build intensity over time. But it's like if someone can do 10 reps of a squat and they have a lot more reps in reserve or left in the tank, then it's like, hey, let's add some load to that and like get that more high intensity stimulus. I also think there's a misconception between like HIIT training, like high intensity interval training, of what is like defined by that, like the classes and whatnot, versus like true high intensity training. And so a lot of times women are like, well, I don't want to go do a group exercise class. And I'm like, I'm not telling you to do that. A lot of those classes are putting women in that moderate state of intensity because they're working for 45 minutes and they might be doing something for a minute on. And if you're a minute on the clock, you're not hitting that high threshold. High intensity is like maximum effort below 30 seconds, like all out. And I also tell women it doesn't have to be a physical sprint. Like a sprint interval can be battle ropes, it can be Versa climber, it can be the stationary bike. Like assault bike will wreck you, but that's going to be really low impact. So it's, again, meeting women where they are, getting them the stimulus, but knowing that you don't have to go physically sprint or lift heavy weight day one. We want to give you the base and the foundational characteristics to then be able to go meet that moment.
Yeah, I love that. Super important. And I also like to make this distinguish here as well, is that lifting heavy could also be your own body weight, right? Because you mentioned body weight squats, but like, let's put it, a body weight squat for you and I would be a little bit more of a warm-up activity, something that we might use just to kind of move. But doing like single leg hopping, that, or up onto a little step or something like that, that's intense, powerful training, and that's body weight. I did some testing the other day, actually. We got some force plates out. I know your science brain will like this.
Yes.
Yeah, and we had some physios come into our studio and we did some plyometric push-ups, and that was super fun. I realized in my own training that I hadn't been focusing on that, and it was probably because of that low energy availability, because I hadn't felt like I was able to push myself like that. And it made me think, I was like, oh, I really kind of neglected this 4-5 rep pushing like as hard as I can go. And I surprised myself. I was still able to get a couple of reps out of these like plyometric push-ups. But most women would look at that and be like, I could never do that. And it's so attainable. Like, it's so attainable for anyone to get that with the right training, the right, help, and the right mindset. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I love that. And I love asking women, when was the last time you jumped? Like sometimes people like just don't jump anymore. And it's like we should be able to be explosive and jump and like feel powerful. And yeah, with the right training, with the right coach, you can build up to that. Some people are going to start, their foundational phase might be a year long. Like you have to think about it long term. Other people, like the athletes that come in for their off season, our foundational phase is like 4 weeks because they're not deconditioned. So everyone needs that foundational phase to really make sure they're moving well. But for a lot of people, it's going to take a long time and they're still going to reap benefits of that. Like they might see muscle mass changes and benefits. We just want to get them to the point that scientifically says is the most beneficial for them. But all movement is good movement. A walk is better than sitting on the couch. Like doing something is always going to be better than nothing. And with the research we have, we know that we can benefit from doing really true high intensity work as women, and we've been encouraged not to for a long time.
Yeah, I think that that misconception that we have in the industry at the moment, that high intensity is a 45-minute class, is just such a damaging misconception. And I think there's a little bit of that fear inside us to push a little bit. But there's also the other side of the coin. Like, I felt it. I felt that low energy availability, that when I do push to those really high intensities, I'm wiped for like days and days and days. So can we talk about maybe, people who maybe want to engage in that and who feel like, oh, I can't, like, I'm so tired. What could we do to help boost that energy?
We always recommend that people in general, regardless of gender, start by building capacity before going towards intensity. So building capacity could be an incline walk on a treadmill, prioritizing resistance over speed, and longer bouts of effort. So if I have beginners come in, hey, we're going to do 3 miles per hour, 12% incline on a treadmill, like, we're building aerobic base. Then as they get more aerobically inclined, they built the capacity, their muscles are developed more, then hey, we can start to speed up the pace, maybe take back the resistance and focus on intensity. And so I would say overall, just helping someone build the capacity first, similar to lifting weights, like higher volume, lower intensity or load. And then once they're good there, then we up the load, drop the volume, or how many reps they're doing, and hit the higher intensity. So biasing capacity before intensity.
Great explanation. I like that. And I like the word capacity. That's such a great word, isn't it?
Yeah, just your ability, your capacity to do something. And I also think, like, if you're not strong and then you try to go sprint, your legs are gonna like not have the power. I always think, like, if you can build that, then like those other efforts are gonna, feel better too.
And they feel stronger as well. Like, yeah, you wouldn't, go for a job interview without preparing. It's the same mind space, right? Like, you have to prepare, you have to do the homework before you do the hard thing that you really want to do.
Yeah. And like looking at cycles, so Exos, we as a company a couple years ago, we were like, we aren't the best resource to the women that come into our facilities because we aren't specializing in this right now. And so we actually partnered with Dr. Stacy Sims, who I've learned so much from. And
Awesome.
she is amazing. We took a lot of her recommendations and we said, like, how do we apply this to a group setting? Because as coaches, it's sometimes hard. You're like, okay, I have women that are all in all different phases of their cycle. Like, how do I train them all at one time and still give them that specialized training, paying attention to these things? And kind of going from the like volume and intensity conversation, we essentially had a group of women that came in and trained with us. I got to be their coach, which was awesome. There was 15 of them, and I got a daily survey from all of them, and they told me when their period started, so I knew when they were at day 1 of their cycle. And then at about day 15, I moved them to like the luteal or high hormone phase group. And on the board, I just had intensive group and extensive group. My intensive group was the follicular low hormone phase, and they were doing that low volume, high intensity training. Like, they were doing sprint intervals, they were doing trap bar deadlifts, 5 sets of 5. And then my extensive group was more in the 3 sets of 12, 15. They were still lifting, but they were focused more on volume over intensity. They were doing longer work periods, knowing that they wouldn't be able to hit as high of an intensity, but they were still building capacity. So even from the lens of where you're at in your cycle, we can alter that. And that kind of comes back to the conversation of, like, you don't just have to do yoga and Pilates. While those can be beneficial, you can still lift weights and you can still run, but like, can you alter your work to rest ratios? Can you alter the percentage of your 1RM and do more volume to help you better recover from those efforts?
That's a great story. It's so important that they hear that the group setting, this is one I often get challenged with. It's too hard when you have that many people. It's not. You've got to be a better coach. You've got to figure out a system, and that's a great system. I love that. It's excellent.
Yeah, it was just similar movement patterns, pretty much same workout of the day, but just different volumes and intensities. And we phrased it as intensive extensive, so we weren't necessarily writing their private health information up on the board, and we kind of eventually they inferred what it meant. But
No, but that's perfect. They're good uses of it because it's like uses of those words because it's not necessarily like you said, it's physiological. And even though you might feel different at different times, that's totally valid as well. When you're looking at long-term training, it's more about consistency and patterns than it is about how you feel on a singular day. And so you can still modify on a singular day, but be within the pattern. I think that's something to really focus on. That's cool. I really like that.
yeah, and going off that, like for women that were menstruating, I left their names off the board completely because, like we talked about physiologically, we knew that, hey, you could actually go PR today and hit those high intensities, but if you don't feel good, I'm not going to, as your coach, tell you, no, you have to go hit this just because that's what the science says. Like your personal experience matters more to me. And so I would just say, hey, if you don't see your name on the board, you choose what feels good to you. And over time, the more educated women became, they started to bias towards training intensely because they were like, I am empowered and like I can hit this high intensity. And some of the women even told me like after I did that, I felt better. And I was like, yeah, it's known that if you can hit those high intensities, sometimes that can help mitigate cramping and mitigate menstrual symptoms. But sometimes you just need to be empowered to be able to do so or be told like you are capable and you can go do this, but I'm not going to force you to.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's so important. I love hearing stuff like that. The empowerment piece is huge. Really cool. We're going to take it super personal for my last question. Not
Okay, let's
to
go.
just because I love your time. So I talk about movement therapy. Movement therapy encompasses anything essentially that you could do for your body, for your mind, for your emotions that feels like therapy to you. At the moment, for yourself, what are you currently doing that you would classify as movement therapy?
Long walks. I recently moved and I'm in a new neighborhood right by a canal. So there's some water and it's just like miles and miles that you can walk. And I feel like there's been a lot of just chaos around my life lately, a lot of personal changes, a lot of like professional stuff happening. That's all good, but it's stress. And I think when I walk, a lot of things become clearer to me. I'm allowed to hear my thoughts. Like you can do a meditative walk where you're noticing different colors and whatever. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to go and see what happens. And so, yeah, it's kind of a way to not be structured, not think. Sometimes I might invite a friend or listen to a podcast, and other times it's just me and my thoughts, and it's really clarifying for me.
Love that. That's beautiful movement therapy. Excellent. Thank you for that. Mikayla, that was amazing. So good. If anyone has any questions, we've got your contact details. It'll all be in the show notes. Please follow Mikayla. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and for the conversation. Like I said, it's just making these things less taboo, empowering women, and opening the conversation so people can better learn. And we're making change by doing so. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Until next time.
Until next time.